Here's a step forward for gender equality, a male birth control pill. Hi there, everyone. It's Jeff, and this is Plain English, where we help you upgrade your English with current events and trending topics. Today's lesson is number 458, and the producer, JR, has uploaded the full content to plainenglish.com/458. Coming up today, the birth control pill has given women more freedom to plan their pregnancies. But decades after the pill's development, it's still women who have to take that pill every day. Now, researchers are experimenting with a birth control pill for men to take. We'll talk about that on today's lesson. The English expression we'll discuss today is shoulder the burden, and we have a quote of the week. This week's lesson contains some grown-up vocabulary, so if that makes you uncomfortable, you might want to choose another lesson from our archives just for today. In English, it's known simply as the pill. When the birth control pill came out in 1960, it promised to give women much more control over when they could get pregnant. Before then, the decision to use some type of contraception always involved the man's consent, or at least knowledge. Women on the pill, as we say, take it either once every day or for 21 out of every 28 days. Either way, the pill contains hormones that prevent ovulation, which is the release of an egg during the menstrual cycle. By giving women more control over when and whether to get pregnant, the pill gave women more opportunities to further their education early in adulthood, to enter the workforce, and to accumulate savings before having children. The reduction in unplanned pregnancies also gave women more choice over whom to marry. For all its benefits, though, the pill isn't perfect. Women, at least in America, still need a doctor's prescription. Not all women can take the pill for health reasons, and I'm sure some of you are waiting for me to point this out. The pill comes with side effects. Today, over 60 years after the first oral contraceptive came out, women are still the ones taking the daily pill, refilling their prescriptions, and suffering the side effects. Many people think this is a small price to pay in exchange for the freedom and opportunity that birth control provides. But in this more enlightened age, isn't it about time that men shoulder at least some of the burden? That's exactly what scientists at the University of Minnesota think, and they've recently developed a male contraceptive drug that has been proven to be 99% effective in mice without side effects. Mice that were given the drug suffered such a steep drop in sperm count that they became sterile, meaning they could not get another mouse pregnant. After the drug was withdrawn, their sperm counts recovered within 4 to 6 weeks. The researchers recently got approval to test the drug on human subjects, and human trials will soon begin. Success with mice does not guarantee that the drug will be effective with humans, and many previous trials have been halted or have failed. Some previous attempts at a male birth control drug have been delivered via injection, which is cumbersome. Another trial required men to spread a gel on their shoulders. Again, not impossible, but not as convenient as a pill either. And finally, other drugs have induced side effects that participants thought were unacceptably high. There are reasons to be optimistic about the drug currently under consideration. Researchers identified an effective dose of their drug. How much would they have to give the mice for the drug to be effective? Then they gave the mice 100 times that dose just to see if there were any side effects. Even at 100 times the effective dose, the mice didn't suffer any side effects, and they still recovered their full virility after a few weeks. If this drug is approved for humans, it could be an important tool for couples to use in family planning. To date, men have had only 2 contraceptive options: to use a condom, which sometimes fails, or to get a vasectomy, a surgery that is intended to be permanent. With a male birth control pill, a man wouldn't have to trust that his partner had remembered to take hers or to use another form of contraception. It would also allow men to give their partners some relief from taking the daily pill and suffering the side effects. This can also indirectly help women too if it reduces unplanned pregnancies overall. But would men even take the pill if one were available? There are reasons to believe they might. A survey in Britain found that 8 out of 10 sexually active men believe contraception is a shared responsibility. In the same survey, a third of men said they would consider using a hormonal contraceptive pill. The pill under consideration now doesn't involve hormones, so presumably that percentage would increase. And a survey in the US found that over 3/4 of sexually active men under the age of 44 were very or somewhat interested in trying out a male contraceptive other than the limited options available now. Speaking of scientific breakthroughs, in lesson 416, you learned about an experimental procedure to connect a pig's kidney to a human patient. It was the first animal-to-human transplant of a kidney. In that experimental case, the human patient was brain dead, meaning that the human would not have survived one way or another. The researchers connected the kidney just to see if it would work without putting a patient in danger, and it did work. Well, after that lesson came out, doctors at the University of Maryland Medical Center successfully transplanted a pig's heart into a human patient. Not a kidney, but a heart. The patient was 57 years old and was not eligible for a human heart transplant because of other conditions. As a last-ditch effort, they tried a pig's heart, and he lived for 2 months. He died in early March, but he got 2 more months on this earth, 2 more months with his family, and it was only the first time a pig's heart had ever been transplanted to a human. I think that's amazing. If you want to hear more about that original surgery and how they got a pig's kidney to work on a human, go to plainenglish.com/416. Today's English expression is an idiom, to shoulder the burden. A burden is a duty, a responsibility, or something that causes you to be worried or distressed. When you shoulder a burden, you are doing something that is stressful, painful, or emotionally difficult, and you're often doing it for someone else. Who shoulders the burden of contraception? As you heard in today's lesson, many couples use the contraceptive pill as birth control. In those couples, it is the woman who shoulders the burden of contraception by going to the doctor, getting a prescription, remembering to take a daily pill, getting the prescription refilled, and suffering the side effects. In those couples, the man blithely enjoys all the benefits of contraception without shouldering any of the burden. In other words, the man doesn't have to pay the price or doesn't have to do the stressful or painful thing. The sanctions on Russia include both official ones imposed by governments and unofficial ones imposed voluntarily by companies. These are likely to increase prices of fuel, food, and other goods. Are consumers around the world willing to shoulder the burden of increasing prices? It's one thing to say you're in favor of sanctions against Russia. It's another thing to agree to pay higher prices as a result. High inflation is hitting people around the world. For the moment, though, people do seem prepared to shoulder that burden. Often, the nearest safe country shoulders the burden of a refugee crisis. Poland has welcomed millions of refugees from Ukraine. Poles have done a heroic job of opening their arms to people in need. They have been the most generous destination country of any recent refugee crisis, at least in my memory. But that doesn't mean it's easy. The government is providing school for children, temporary shelter for families, and free transportation. Individuals are opening their homes, cooking meals, and volunteering to help. So we can say that people in Poland are shouldering the burden of the refugee crisis. This doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean that they don't want to do it. It just means that they, in Poland, are making the sacrifice at this time. They are shouldering the burden of the refugee crisis. I mentioned earlier that you often shoulder a burden for the benefit of others. In this case, Poland is shouldering the burden for the rest of Europe. By welcoming the refugees in their borders, Poland is taking the responsibility that might otherwise fall to other countries. And of course, I should point out that Romania, Hungary, Slovakia, and many other European countries have welcomed and accepted refugees too. The point is only to say that Poland has shouldered the majority of the burden in this case. Poland has done the majority of the hard work here. Who shoulders the burden of housework where you live? In my house, it's a 100% male activity. After all, I'm the only one who lives here. But in male-female households, it's often the women who shoulder more of the burden. It doesn't mean that the man doesn't contribute, and obviously we're speaking in generalities. But a recent survey of European countries found that in all countries, more women did housework than men. They shouldered the greatest burden, and this was especially true in Greece, Hungary, Austria, and Italy. But there were big differences across Europe. In Sweden, Denmark, and the UK, men shoulder more of the burden than in other countries. In Sweden and Denmark, over half the men contributed to housework and shouldered at least some of the burden. Today's quote of the week is from the American writer Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, "Every hero becomes a bore at last." A bore is a dull or uninteresting person. Every hero, according to Ralph Waldo Emerson, becomes a bore at last. Well, that's all for today's Plain English audio lesson. The video lesson is online at plainenglish.com/458. The video lesson is about when you have two options, but one thing is true no matter which option you take, and you're going to use the phrase either way. Now, just like in all the videos, I'll tell you what types of situations you can use this in. I'll show you step by step how to form a sentence, and I'll give you the chance to practice and get my personal feedback on what you write. That's for Plain English Plus members, and you can find it at plainenglish.com/458. If you're not yet a Plain English Plus member, you can join and watch this video and hundreds of others just like it, all made by me, by visiting plainenglish.com/plus, Plus. We'll be back on Thursday with a new lesson. See you then.